as the American people have shown every day since that bright September morning. As President Trump said on these grounds 1 year ago, in his words, we overcome every challenge. We triumph over every evil.
Yes.
And we remain united as one nation under God.
Yes.
Max Belkey grew up in a big family on a small farm in Minnesota. He was drafted out of high school into the United States Army and served for 2 years on the Korean Peninsula. Like so many veterans of the Korean War, he re-enlisted after the conflict ended. And more than 15 years later, he took up the cause of liberty fighting in the jungles of Vietnam. On March 29, 1973, Master Sergeant Max Belkey became the last American combat soldier to leave Saigon. On September 11, 2001, Master Sergeant Belkey was among the first to be declared lost here at the Pentagon. Today, on this September 11th, we mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. But we do not grieve like those who have no hope.
Absolutely.
Because heroes give us hope.
Absolutely.
Today we remember our beloved fallen, whose names are enshrined at this memorial and will forever be etched in the hearts of the American people for as long as this nation endures. Today we remember the families of those we lost, who endured this tragedy with strength and courage. And today we remember the brave men and women who responded here and in New York City and in the air over Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And on fields of battle in the 17 years since.
Yes.
Who considered our lives more important than their own.
Yes.
And today we breathe a prayer for all of them and all of you. A prayer that I'm told that Master Sergeant Belkey recited every time he spoke to veterans in gatherings large and small across this country. He would always end with the same words, and so I end. To you who are gathered here and have suffered this loss, to those we remember who look down from glory, and to those who fight and stand for our freedom this very hour.
Jeremy, Morgan,
May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back.
Yes.
May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rain fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. We claim this ground in remembrance of September 11, 2001. We honor the 184 people whose lives were lost, their families, and all who sacrificed, that we may live in freedom.
Yes.
May God bless them. May God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.
Yes. That was Vice President Mr. Pence.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's observance. Thank you for joining us this morning. Please remain in place for the departure of today's official party.
These are remarkable sights and sounds, and they are just something that really stirs you every year from the Pentagon and Shanksville and Ground Zero in New York City. And we're going to continue to mark the events as we move throughout the morning here. We anticipate the President and the First Lady at about 10:30 Eastern Time. They're in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, so we will bring that speech to you in about 22 minutes from now. In the meantime, the names of the dead continue to be read one after the other in Lower Manhattan, New York City, and we've been watching the family members,
John A. Hoffer,
the police officers, the firefighters come down, and the sunflowers above the fountains of Lower Manhattan is just
Michelle L. Hoffman.
it's a touching moment. We were all Americans today, certainly. We were all Americans then, and we have been in this fight for 17 years, and now we wonder where it goes next. General Jack Keane has been our co-pilot for so many years, and General, good morning to you, and thank you for being here today, and thank you for the wisdom you have brought our audience for years now about this ongoing fight. I'll touch on that in a moment, but you were at the Pentagon on 9/11.
Leroy W. Homer.
What's your thought from that day, General?
Bradley V. Horn.
Well, it was a day like no other, certainly, and it's been seared into my memory forever. It began just like any other day. I met with my general officers at a 7 o'clock meeting, and in about an hour or so, we knew there was a terrorist attack in New York City, brought the Army Operations Center up to full manning, which turned out to be fortuitous, because a lot of those people we moved to bring it up to full manning is where the airplane hit. And then the airplane hit us, certainly, after the second airplane had hit the World Trade Center. My office shook, some of the debris came down, smoke came into the room, white smoke initially, and then eventually black. I told my staff, call home and evacuate, and I took my aide and my assistant, and I told them to wet. I had some T-shirts in my bathroom, and I wet them up, and we went down to the blast site to give people a hand down there, and I saw something I've seen before, raw, stark fear, and also people helping one another, and also, dogged determination to live. It brought me back to a combat zone, but this was the headquarters of the United States Army. We lost 85 people that day. We lost more people in the Army that day than any other day during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, interesting enough. The day ended for me by visiting all the wounded. They were spread out in 5 hospitals, and some of it was a horrific sight because we had severely burned victims. Anybody's ever been around a burned victim, what a struggle for life that truly is. But I heard stories as I went from patient to patient on what had happened to them that day, their personal struggle to survive, and the heroism that took place that day. It was quite remarkable. The next morning, I walked around the building, and the Pentagon is a place to work, but it's also a place of duty. And the duty of the workforce, largely civilian, is in that Pentagon. And they were gathered in small groups, not really at their computers, but talking to each other, trying to digest what had happened these last 12, 14 hours for them. And I recognized what a determination it took for them to come to their place of duty. They knew we were at war was the reason. That was the most frequent thing that they asked. Sir, we're at war, correct? I said, yes, we are. And that's why they were there. It is one of the proudest moments of my life, because his is largely civilian workforce, about 2/3 civilian, 1/3 military, at their place of duty in the Pentagon, where they lost their teammates and where so many have been wounded, and they're there the next morning because they know we're going to a war, and they're a part of that team. It was really something I've never ever forgotten.
Now, 17 years on through Afghanistan, through Iraq, and you think about Al-Qaeda today, you think about ISIS today, you think about Libya and Somalia and Yemen. How have we done, General? And can you tell us where we're going in this? Can you forecast where the fight's headed?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question, and one that we should keep asking ourselves. In my own view, the obvious is what has been achieved. We have not received catastrophic attacks on this country, nor has the enemy been able to sustain multiple continuous attacks on our country that would really begin to interfere with the norms and rhythms of everyday life. And nor have they been able to achieve that in Europe either. And that is principally and singularly because we have taken the fight to them, and we have stayed the course with that. Protracted wars really test the resolve of democracies because people get frustrated by it. They don't see the end in sight. It's not visible like a major campaign in Europe was during World War II, or even one in Korea. The process of fighting an enemy that's hiding from you and hiding in among the people or hiding in the mountains is a different kind of war, a different kind of struggle.
Or hiding in the White House.
So we've done that. But what we have not been able to do is have impact on the ideology. And that is really our struggle. And it makes it a multi-generational struggle as a result of it. That ideology, sadly to say, is actually spread. You know, ISIS, despite destroying what they had in Iraq and Syria, is in 30 affiliate countries. The Al-Qaeda is stronger now than when we killed Osama bin Laden a number of years ago. And that meant that this radical Islamic movement has spread in the world.
It's increased.
And it's spreading because there are young people that want to join it and believe in its ideology.
It's
when
increased.
They're killed, another replaces them. When their leaders are killed, somebody else replaces them.
Right.
And what does that tell us?
It's a disease.
That tells us that if we're in an ideological struggle, the only thing that's going to beat that ideological struggle is better ideas. That's how we beat communism.
Yeah.
Right.
We beat communism with democracy and capitalism. And we have to help people to do that. But mostly, this is about Muslims inside the Islamic religion working to offer their young people an alternative other than this fanaticism and radical Islam. And the president said as much last summer in July in Riyadh with 55 leaders there. And he was challenging them to move in that direction. And that really has to be done before we're going to make that kind of a change.
Thank you, General. Jack Keane here in Washington, D.C. I think about the truck bomb here in New York City, the truck attack, rather, last Halloween, a pipe bomb attack in Times Square in December. So it continues to find its way into our world, and sometimes too close to home. Jack Keane, thank you, sir. Thank you for being here
Good talking to
today.
you, Bill.
A day we have not forgotten and we will never forget. The chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, Congressman Mike McCaul, is standing by at the Pentagon as the ceremony has just concluded there. We will have him in just a moment. Also, as we remember this day that changed America forever, the family of one fallen hero is getting a big helping hand. Up next, how a special foundation is honoring those who defend our freedoms.
Do you remember when gold was just $20 an ounce? Not long ago, you could buy 5 gold coins like these for $100.
Are on the ground for the memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania this morning as the remembrance continues there. As you look on at live pictures, Ground Zero, Lower Manhattan, as the names of the thousands of victims continue to be read aloud this morning. As we await the president, let's bring in Congressman Mike McCaul. He is the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. He joins us now from the Pentagon. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your time this morning. As we look back 17 years later now, what are the threats that we face today when you look back at the threats we faced 17 years ago?
Well, we can never forget what happened here 17 years ago. I thought the Vice President gave a phenomenal speech in remembrance. But the fact is, I think radical Islamist terror hasn't gone away, but we have really given them a sort of crushing blow to the caliphate in Iraq and Syria. My threat briefings in the Capitol, classified, have gone way down since this new administration has come in. And I think that's good news for America. But we can't forget what happened. It's still a threat today. I think the emerging threats that I see we face as a nation are those from Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. And so we can never forget what happened. But I think our men and women serving in military have done us a great service defeating the so-called caliphate in Iraq and Syria.
You know, Chairman, it's so important on this day every year when we look back and we remember the fallen. We look back at what happened to us here on American soil. It was unimaginable. But it's also important to remember how we responded. How do you look back at our response to this horror?
Well, it was triumphant. I think our response in 17 years, remember, a quarter of the American people weren't even born at that time in history. And I think it's important that we remember and reflect on what happened as my children who were born around the time of 9/11, that this is now in the history books for them.
Absolutely.
But for us, Sandra, it's a living history that we all went through. We all remember what happened that day. That bright blue sky day where the terrorists hijacked these airliners and crashed into the Pentagon, a symbol of military might, and the economic symbol of might in the World Trade Center. And Sandra, the third target was the United States Capitol, the symbol of political might. And thank God they didn't succeed in that one. But I also want to thank our men and women. I was with Rob O'Neill just the other night talking about the killing of Osama bin Laden, really bringing this horrific nightmare to an end. And I want to thank the 5 million plus people who signed up to serve in the military after the tragedy of 9/11.
We are waiting.
The thing about it is, the death of bin Laden was a political ploy that was manufactured by the royal Saudi family of using him as an scapegoat, but in reality, the true perpetrators that has done this is still at large over in Saudi Arabia and should be held to the fullest extent of our American laws. This is not over. It is far from being over. Just like the ideology that reeks now, not only in bringing grief and a burden to the American people, but now it's bringing grief and burdens upon to other nations all over the world. And until we are committed in this cause, in eradicating this type of evil, the very axis of evil, it will continue to grow and it will continue to bring more hardship upon the innocent men and women's lives all over this planet. Not just this country, but this planet. That's the reason why I stand behind our chief and commander, Donald Trump, as President of the United States of America.
Well, I think it's important the American people know that we're far better prepared to prevent a terrorist attack. In fact, we've stopped probably 99% of the external operations since 9/11. We have stopped that. My committee, the Committee on Homeland Security, was formed in response to the 9/11 attacks. The Department of Homeland Security was put together in response to 9/11, and we stopped basically bad people and bad things getting into this country, whether it be at the United States border, which I think is so important, and the functions of what ICE does, but also TSA in terms of protecting Americans on aviation, passenger airliners, such as what happened on 9/11.
Right.
There's a current threat against our aviation sector.
All the
They
time.
always go back to it. It's a crown jewel for them to bring down an American airliner.
For sure.
But we've been very successful in stopping that.
Yep.
And we've done a lot in the Congress also to appropriate the money and the oversight to ensure that Americans are safe when they fly both here in the United States and overseas abroad.
Just a few moments ago behind you, we heard from the Vice President saying we will never forget James Mattis. We remember the bravery and sacrifice of those who fell here in America and then on far-flung battlefields. Such an important message there at the Pentagon a few minutes ago. Chairman Michael McCaul, thank you for your time this morning as we look back nearly 2 decades later. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
We're going to take you live to Shanksville, Pennsylvania in a moment here. We'll get the President and the First Lady in about 6 minutes from now, so that's coming up here. 17 years ago today, 3,000 souls left us forever, and one of them has left a mark that lives on today and will for a very long time. When the hijacked plane slammed into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, most people ran from danger, but not Stephen Siller. The New York City firefighter just finished his shift. He was heading home to Staten Island when he heard the news, and Siller turned his truck around, only to find the tunnel in Lower Manhattan closed, but that did not stop this man. He put on his gear, ran through the tunnel, heading into the towers, into Ground Zero to help save lives, and tragically, Stephen Siller was never seen again. His body never found. Stephen's heroism inspired his older brother to honor his legacy, and with me now is Frank Siller, the chairman and CEO of the Tunnels and Towers Foundation. And Frank, it's an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you, Bill.
You have become quite a friend over the years, and it's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
First, your son, your brother, Stephen Siller, and what he did on that day. The youngest of 7 kids.
Yeah.
What do you think about today? About Steve?
Well, Stephen was a dynamic person when he was alive, and how he gave his life up was nothing less than heroic as we honor him today and all those who perished. But, Stephen was married, father of 5. So that sacrifice was felt very painful. Just sent one of his younger children off to college. So life has changed a lot over the last 17 years. The 5 of them are doing very well. My sister-in-law is a very strong person. She's doing well. But, not just today, but all the time I think about him. I think of what life would be like if he was around. But through his sacrifice, we've been able to do so much good around this great country.
I mean, you've raised so much money for so many firefighters and their families, and so many police officers today, and so many who have been wounded in battle overseas who have come home. Do you know quickly, was your brother in the North Tower or the South Tower?
South Tower.
Were you able to determine that?
Well, we were in as that his whole company was in the South Tower, and if you're a firefighter, you want to be with your brothers from the firehouse. So when he got there, he found out that his Squad 1 were in the South Tower, and that's where we believe he died.
The reason I ask you that question is there's a moment of silence coming now for the collapse of the North Tower.
1028.
Ground Zero. And as we approach that mark, let's just pause for a moment and observe that.
Michael Patrick Lafort.
Alan Charles LaFox.
And at
Juan-
1029 on the East Coast, the names continue in Lower Manhattan. Frank, I mentioned the financial contribution that your organization has done for hundreds and hundreds of people. You have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. And today you're taking a new step because today you're actually dedicating a home to a family in Georgia, Barnesville, Georgia, south and east of Atlanta, Georgia.
Correct.
And last 30 minutes ago,
At 9:59.
when we marked the fall of the South Tower, you did something remarkable. What happened?
Well, we gave the keys to a Gold Star family, the widow and two daughters of Corporal Colin Schaff, who gave his life protecting our country. And he left behind two beautiful daughters. His wife was pregnant with the second one when he died in last July. Here's the thing. Our foundation wants to do good. And to take a day like today and do something that makes a positive and lasting difference in somebody's life, like a Gold Star family, we feel it's just important. It sends a message that, yes, evil exists, but so does goodness. And we want to turn that around and do something good like this today. So we're proud of the work that we're doing. To hand over this beautiful house. You'll never have to worry about a mortgage.
Wow.
You know, in less than a year, they have to be off the barracks and gone. They don't have a place to live. And many of them move from one place to another, so they don't have a home. So we are so honored to do this today.
That flag is enormous, and that's
Yes.
what unveiled the home earlier today in Barnesville, Georgia, just last hour.
Yes. Yeah, we have our whole team down there. I was down at Ground Zero early today, said my prayers. I lost a lot of good friends that day, of course, my brother most of all. And our foundation is one that we said in the very beginning. St. Francis said, brothers and sisters, while we are
That's
here,
so
while we
nice.
have time, let us do good. This is good, and this is necessary, the work that we're doing.
It's really remarkable. As you mentioned, Sarah lost her husband, Marine Corporal Colin Schaff, in July of 2017. His military transport plane crashed in Mississippi, and she had a child and another one on the way. And now she is blessed with, well, the good fortune of meeting someone like you to take a lot of concern about how she's going to pay a lot of her bills from this day forward. What strikes me about the stories you're relaying here, Frank, and I've known you for a long time, and whether it's firefighters in New York or police officers around the country, or whether it's U.S. men and women serving overseas and coming back with less fortunate than they had when they left, the need never stops for you.
No, we need all the help we can get all year long. You know, we have a run at the end of the September. Always the last Sunday in September. It's the September 30th. It's called the Tunnel to Towers Run. Name of the foundation, because my brother ran through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel to the towers and gave up his life. We'll have 30,000 people running through that tunnel. We'll have West Point cadets, 2,500 West Point cadets, firefighters, police officers from all over the country. We have U.S. Marshals, because Chris Hill gave his life this year, U.S. Marshal. We helped that family. We have a police officer from Weymouth, Massachusetts, the Chesnut family. We have Raguso and Briggs, who were part of the 106 that went down to 17. They're coming, their families. So this run, all right, albeit called Stephen Siller Tunnel to Towers Run, it's about honoring the greatness of America. So many men and women have done the same sacrifice and paid the same price as my brother. We can never forget them, and this is how we do it.
TunnelsToTowers.org.
Thank you, Bill.
See you real soon, okay?
Thank you.
Sandra.
We are awaiting comments from President Trump. He and the First Lady Melania Trump visiting Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Another September 11th memorial. A field there became a memorial after 40 passengers and crew crashed in a field after hijackers took control of a California-bound commercial airliner on the morning of September 11th, 17 years later. We await the president's remarks on the ground in Shanksville. We'll be right back.
Especially his wife Veronica, his sons Kieran and Ryan, his daughters-in-law Courtney and Darren, and his 3 grandchildren, Aiden, Declan, and his 2.5-year-old granddaughter Rory Marie.
We are waiting to hear President Trump's remarks at a ceremony on the ground in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at the site of the crash of United Flight 93. The ceremony is underway there. Molly Line is also there. She joins us now as we await the president. Molly?
Sandra, as you can see behind me, the President and First Lady have arrived. They are on stage. The ceremony is underway. We just listened to the bells of remembrance ringing, honoring all 40 of the heroes that are credited with fighting back against the 9/11 terrorists in that plane on Flight 93. Those 40 people remembered as losing their lives and saving other lives on that day. The plane crashing here in what is considered a field of honor. They saved an unknown number of innocent people at the terrorist intended target believed to be the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Ed Root lost his beloved cousin, Lorraine Bay, who was a crew member.
I don't know if they really thought they could save their lives, but I believe they knew if they didn't act, other people would die unnecessarily.
Their remarkable courage being remembered today as we await the remarks of President Trump, slated to begin in a few moments. The president expected to speak a little after 10:30. Sandra?
Molly, this is the second observance of September 11th of the president's time in office, his first visit to Shanksville. The president last year observed this at the White House. But a native New Yorker, this day, the president, as we just heard from Chairman Michael McCaul, I asked him, what do you want to hear from the president when he steps up in Shanksville a few moments from now to make remarks on this 17-year anniversary of 9/11? And he said, I want to hear confidence. What do we expect to hear from the president as he begins speaking moments from now? He'll be introduced by the Interior Secretary, Ryan Zinke.
America is the home of the brave.
Ryan Zinke actually just beginning to speak now. We just heard from Gordon Felt, who is the president of the families of Flight 93, and we haven't received guidance from the White House regarding exactly what the president will be saying today. So I think we're going to have to wait and see. I would hate to try to put words in his mouth. Sandra?
We await the president's remarks shortly. Molly Line, thank you.
If you ever find yourself south central Pennsylvania, it is worth the exit ramp to find your way to this memorial for Flight 93 in Somerset County. And what Molly was referring to is this new memorial that's being unveiled today. And this is a significant deal. It's 40 wind chimes that represent the 40 victims, 93 feet tall, to represent Flight 93. No other chime like it in the world. The shape and orientation of the tower is designed to optimize airflow through the tower walls that reach the interior chime chamber and honor those who perished in that field on that morning.
The president's expected to honor the many lives that were lost that day. When asked, the White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, speaking on behalf of the president, says he plans to remember that horrific day and remember the lives that were lost, and certainly honoring the individuals who were not only lost that day, but also put their lives on the line to help in that process.
Absolutely. Think about the number of people who were affected that day and have been affected since. Remember, the names were read today, beginning at 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time. That was almost 2 hours ago. And they still continue to read the names in Lower New York City.
Alexander.
We're going to listen to that as we wait the president in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Farrell Peter Lynch.
James Francis Lynch,
James T. Lynch Jr.
Louise A. Lynch,
Michael Cameron Lynch,
Michael Francis Lynch,
Michael Francis Lynch,
Richard D. Lynch Jr.
and my brother, Christopher Michael Duffy. In just 23 short years, your tenacious spirit made such an impact on and off the field that they're naming a locker room after you at Fordham Prep. Today's all about you.
Awesome.
You always had an eye for style. So I traded in my fire department uniform and got all dressed up in this nice suit, just for you. Time whizzes by, but so do the dragonflies. Keep buzzing over our tribe. All your friends and family love you and miss you every day.
And to my beautiful sister, Diane Teresa Signer, and our unborn child, the whole family misses you so much. Think about you every day. Should have a niece and nephew now, about 17 years old. Also, I want to mention my Aunt Gail. We love and miss you too.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ryan. So beautiful. We're gathered together on these hallowed grounds to honor the memory of nearly 3,000 souls who were murdered on this day 17 years ago. We're here to pay solemn tribute to the 40 passengers and crew members on Flight 93 who rose up, defied the enemy, took control of their destiny, and changed the course of history.
Yes, they did.
Today we mourn their loss, we share their story, and we commemorate their incredible valor.
Yes.
On September 11th, 2001, a band of brave patriots turned the tide on our nation's enemies and joined the immortal ranks of American heroes.
Yes.
At this memorial on this sacred earth, in the field beyond this wall, and in the skies above our heads, we remember the moment when America fought back. Melania and I are grateful to be joined for today's ceremony by Governor Tom Wolf and Governor Mark Schweiker. I also want to thank the members of Congress in attendance, Senator Bob Casey, Congressman Lou Barletta, Keith Rothfuss, Bill Schuster, and along with the president of the families of Flight 93, Gordon Felt. We're also joined by members of the National Park Service, along with firefighters, first responders, and incredible people from law enforcement. These are truly great people.
Yes.
Some of you here today answered the call and raced to this field 17 years ago. You fill our hearts with pride, and I want to thank you on behalf of our country. Thank you very much. Most importantly, to the family members of Flight 93. Today, all of America wraps up and joins together. We close our arms to help you shoulder your pain and to carry your great, great sorrow. Your tears are not shed alone, for they are shared grief with an entire nation.
Yes.
We grieve together for every mother and father, sister and brother, son and daughter who was stolen from us at the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and here in this Pennsylvania field. We honor their sacrifice by pledging to never flinch in the face of evil and to do whatever it takes to keep America safe.
Yes.
"17 years ago, your loved ones were among the 40 of Flight 93, the 40 passengers and crew members on board the 8 a.m. United Airlines flight from Newark to San Francisco. They were men and women from every background. They were young people returning from visiting family, moms and dads on business trips, and friends going and coming from birthdays and weddings. They boarded the plane as strangers, and they entered eternity, linked forever as true heroes.
Yes.
Soon after takeoff, Flight 93 was hijacked by evil men bent on terror and conquest. Passengers and crew members began using their phones to call home. They learned that 2 planes had already crashed into the World Trade Center in New York City. Immediately, those on board Flight 93 started planning a response. Sandy Bradshaw, a flight attendant, called her husband and told him they were in the back of the plane preparing hot water to throw onto the hijackers. Passenger Jeremy Glick explained the plan to his wife and said, "Stay on the line, I'll be back." The passengers and crew members came together, took a vote, and they decided to act. At that moment, they took their fate and America's fate back into their own hands. In the last 20 minutes, many placed their final calls home, whispering those eternal words, "I love you." Some said the Lord's Prayer, and then they bravely charged the cockpit. They attacked the enemy. They fought until the very end.
Yes, they did.
And they stopped the forces of terror and
evil.
defeated this wicked, horrible, evil plan.
Yes.
Flight 93 crashed yards from where we stand, just 20 minutes flying time from the United States Capitol. Through their sacrifice, the 40 saved the lives of countless Americans.
Yes.
And they saved our capital from a devastating strike.
Yes.
In the days after the attack, tens of thousands of firefighters, police officers, and recovery workers traveled to New York and Arlington to crawl through the rubble and search for survivors.
Yes.
There were prayer vigils, memorials, and charity drives all across our nation.
Yes.
Here in Shanksville, many of you raised up the first memorial, a wooden cross, a chain-linked fence,
Right.
mementos and tributes pouring in,
Right.
and dozens of American flags. A piece of America's heart is buried on these grounds.
Yep.
But in its place has grown a new resolve to live our lives with the same grace and courage as the heroes of Flight 93.
Yep.
This field is now a monument to American defiance. This memorial is now a message to the world. America will never, ever submit to tyranny.
Amen. Ever.
Since September 11th, nearly 5.5 million young Americans have enlisted in the United States Armed Forces. Nearly 7,000 service members have died facing down the menace of radical Islamic terrorism.
Yep. And that's exactly what it is. Islamic.
Today we also think of the more than 200,000 service members now serving overseas. And we think of every citizen who protects our nation at home,
Absolutely.
including our state, local, and federal law enforcement.
Absolutely.
These are great Americans. These are great heroes. We honor and thank them all.
Yes.
As Commander-in-Chief, I will always do everything in my power to prevent terrorists from striking American soil. Here with us today is Dorothy Garcia Loeffler. Her husband, Sonny, was one of the passengers on Flight 93. On September 11th, 2001, just over a month after their 32nd wedding anniversary, Sonny was on his way back from a business meeting. He called Dorothy, who he loved so much, called her on the plane, and uttered her name before the line went dead silent. In the days after the attack, Dorothy told the investigators there was only one thing she wanted from this field: her husband's wedding ring. They would know it by the inscription etched inside. All my love, it said, followed by the number 8269, the date of their anniversary. The officers, great people, promised to try, but in this field of records, it seemed certainly impossible. Dorothy began to pray, and she asked her friends to do the same. Days went by, then months. Still no ring. A week before Christmas, on December 19th, she heard a knock at the door. Two officers were standing with a really beautiful, to her, she saw it was so beautiful. She knew what was happening. A beautiful, small white box. Inside it was a wallet, a luggage tag, a driver's license, a small bag with the wedding ring inscribed with those three precious words: all my love. Those words echo across this field. And those words tell the story of 40 men and women who gave all their love for their families, their country.
Yes.
And our freedom.
Yes.
To Dorothy and to every family here today, America will never forget what your loved ones did for all of us.
That's right.
Earlier this week, you dedicated the final part of this memorial, the Tower of Voices. Standing at 93 feet tall, the Tower of Voices is now the first structure visitors see when they come to this now sacred ground. It will hold 40 beautiful chimes that ring throughout these fields, each a unique note, but all in perfect harmony.
Yep.
Each time we hear those chimes playing in the wind, we will remember the 40. We will remember their faces, their voices, their stories, their courage, and their love. And we will remember that free people are never at the mercy of evil, because our destiny is always in our hands.
Yes. And in the hands of God, the Creator.
America's future is not written by our enemies.
That's right.
America's future is written by our heroes.
Yep.
As long as this monument stands, as long as this memorial endures, brave patriots will rise up in America's hours of need, and they too will fight back.
Yes.
"17 years ago, 40 incredible men and women showed the whole world that no force on earth will ever conquer the American spirit.
That's right.
We treasure their memory, we cherish their legacy, and we ask God to forever bless the immortal heroes
Yes.
of Flight 93. Thank you, God bless you. God bless the families. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
2018.
Rather, a number of poignant moments.
9/11.
Will never ever submit to tyranny. That seemed to bring the loudest applause from the small crowd gathered there. Talked about the wedding ring with all their love going forward, and concluding it with that phrase, "They too will fight back," as a symbol for the rest of America and what they would do and will do when faced with a similar threat to themselves and their lives and their families.
We remember the moment America fought back, said the president. On this day, September 11th, 17 years ago, a band of brave patriots turned the tide on our nation's enemies and joined the immortal ranks of American heroes. He talked about the passengers on Flight 93, how they fought until the very end and fought the forces of terror. They saved countless Americans that day. He also talked about the military and 5.5 million Americans that have enlisted in the military since 9/11. The president saying America's future is not written by our enemies.
Very much looking forward to a return visit in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, see the tower of voices that he just described and the wind chimes that represent the 40 victims. It must be a remarkable sight. I mean, it sounds like it's such a unique memorial, certainly. None like it anywhere in the world. And we remember all of them today, as we remember those in Lower Manhattan. I mentioned a moment ago, Sandra, they started the reading of the names at 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time. On the clock, that was 2 hours and 14 minutes ago. And the names continue here in New York City.
The president spending the last few minutes remembering the lives that were lost, but also honoring the individuals' lives who were not lost that day, those that have lined up to help fight back. An important point to remember on this day. So much has changed, Bill. 17 years later, the president honoring those that have fallen and those that continue to fight on our battlefields in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
September 11th, 2018 continues.